You may have noticed we're in the midst of dynamic change in our world. This week, yes, and it's good. This week, many people were saying, "Oh my God, the world is changing." While others were saying, "Oh my God, the world is changing." And everybody's right, it's changing. So I was a little offended this morning when I was preparing for my service, and Linda came in and handed me this rainbow bracelet for me to wear. She said, "You should wear this." Now, let me tell you why I'm offended. It's an AARP bracelet. Obviously, I'm much too young to be doing such a thing, but so you know things have changed when the AARP is saying celebrating pride for all generations, right? We live in a very different time. This morning, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I didn't know before. I don't know now. We'll see when it's all over, because there's a lot of things I want to talk about. But part of this is personal. So I don't ever want to take a political use of this pulpit. But things are changing. And this week, the Supreme Court, if you didn't know, made a ruling that struck down DOMA. So I have an announcement. I'm gay. I know this is breaking news for you. Who knew? But I'm also gay and married, at least in Canada. So this conversation is going to continue to happen. But what I want us to know about this is not about gay, not gay. This is not about that. This is about, as Martin Luther King said, the long arc of history always bends towards justice. Yes. You see, we celebrate this week the 4th of July. And this amazing principle and concept that our country, through the genius of some individuals and their very smart wives, came together and created an ideal for who we would be. And they said, it is our belief that we all have an inalienable right for freedom, that all men are created equal. Now, it turns out, as we set that ideal for ourselves, that we've had to keep revisiting. Because all of a sudden, all the chicks want to be equal too. The women said, I know, it's crazy, but I wasn't there. They said, well, we think we'd like to vote. Fine, I'm down with that. We want to drive. Well, now we got to have a conversation. I'm kidding. It's a joke. And then people of different colors said, we think we'd like to be treated equally as well. Maybe we can't own other people as part of this inalienable right to live life, liberty, and happiness. And so now we see the next wave of that as people who have a different sexual orientation who are saying, wait a minute, how is this that if I want to marry my partner, that I can't? Here's a question I have. How does it affect your marriage, how anybody else gets married? I've never figured this out. Now, so I've been ruminating about this because now that I've let the cat out of the bag and you all know that I'm gay, I have to watch this history. I remember as a young man coming to a place in time where I became aware of the same sex. All my friends were becoming aware of the opposite sex, but it's different if you're gay, right? So that kind of awakening, and I had no framework whatsoever for that. I knew what the church was saying, which was not good. And I had no role models. I had nothing to look to in the world to say, what does this mean? And so as I grew up, I figured it out, right? I began to move forward. And then a strange thing happened along the way on my spiritual journey. I went into prayer and said, God, what would you have me do with my life? And God said, become a minister. And I said, okay, I want to pray this one more time because and this time, God, I want you to listen closely to the question because clearly you didn't get it before, right? Isn't that how we are? We say, I've surrendered my life to God, and God directs us in a way we're like, oh no, and going to go to that, right? So this is kind of a personal sharing today, but we'll either deal with it or not. But I want us to understand how this fits in the context. So then I had this calling to go into ministry. Now, I'm not the sharpest bulb or sharpest knife in the drawer. We'll go with that one, okay? At this point in my life, I actually went to a 4-day work week so I could spend 1 day a week down at the church doing all the things that I was doing. I was leading children's program. I was taking them off to camp. I'm on the board. I'm kind of enmeshed in this thing called ministry. And when God says, I want you to become a minister, I was like, are you kidding? That's what I do. It was like, so then I was kind of struggling with this decision. I went to my minister, Reverend Joyce, and I said, can I have lunch with you? I'm really struggling with this decision. And she said, okay, sure. She said, I said, I'm feeling called to go into the ministry. She said, uh-huh. Apparently it was only news to me that this was happening. And she said, okay, so? I said, well, do you know I'm gay? And she said, no. And? It was like, but you see, my concept, being a good Southern Baptist, minister and gay did not go together, at least openly. At least openly. So I had to work through that. Then I remember moving through school of ministry, and people would ask me this. I love this question. Do you want to have a gay ministry? And I'm like, I'm not even sure what that means. Like my church is only attracted to other churches, or, I'm just not, I wear a boa and pumps. I just don't know. I don't know what this question means. But I remember saying to people, you see, there's so much more that unites us than divides us. To think of me somehow as different from you in one way, is silly to me. There's people that are thin. We love them, I'm not going to hold that against them. There's people that are tall, that are short, that are, of different colors, skin, all of it, and it's like, that's not what should divide us. That's what we should bring us together, that we should celebrate. And so I had to deal with the divine as I went through the school of ministry. I surrendered to my greater good. I knew what was being called in my heart to be of service through ministry. And so I went through all of the things that were necessary to become a minister, and people would just ask, what's your vision and where do you want to go and what do you want to do with your ministry? And I said, I have this deal with God. And the deal is this: show me the bus and I'll get on it. I had surrendered to that point in my life that I knew that there was a divine wisdom at work that I didn't fully understand, that I couldn't fully comprehend, and that would call me forth. And so when I was ready to graduate, I began what we call candidating, visiting different churches that were looking for ministers. You go through this little inquisition, and they ask you completely inappropriate questions, and it's just a wonderful process. Everyone should have it at least once. And so it became down between Vancouver and Dallas. Now, here's the thing about Dallas. Today is a cool day in Dallas. Because you not only get 100 degrees, you get 108% humidity. It is crazy. So I'm like, Vancouver, because my ego was very cool. And as it turned out, we actually were in negotiations, and then it fell apart. And I later discovered that part of that was they were not okay with having a gay minister. In fact, Canada is about 10 years ahead of us anyways in terms of this issue. And one of the problems with the previous minister that was she was performing same-gender marriage ceremonies. Shocking. What I absolutely know is that my highest good was revealed through going to Dallas, where I took over an existing minister. It was a very exciting time. Wonderful things happened. But I remember then going through ministry and doing all of the things that were happening. It was wonderful. It was exciting. But this question always came up of the gay minister. And so when I later moved to Oklahoma, as I was candidating for that church, and one of the people said to me, love these questions. Here's the things. People say some of the silliest things. I remember, as long as I'm just riffing here. I remember one time somebody saying to me, I have a cousin in Florida who's gay. Do you know him? Yes, there's this network of us, and we all know each other. We all know where we are at all the times, right? Or then, heaven forbid, the gay agenda. I love this one. Somebody gave me this wonderful thing that said, the gay agenda. Morning, brunch. After brunch, go shopping at Nordstrom's. Then it was lunch, and then overthrow the world, and then back to disco party or whatever. I thought, that's good, because it is obviously an agenda to have life be different. So anyways, in this process, somebody said to me, I'm not sure how we would feel about some of our congregants would feel about having a gay minister. And again, I said, what you need to understand is I'm coming to be your minister. The fact that I'm gay is just one piece of who I am. And I will never identify myself as this or anything else or more than I have. We used to have black hair. It's kind of grayish now, but it's still there. Right? So the long arc of history bends towards justice. So then later, a lot of stories in here, I met a man who was also becoming a minister. At the time that I was so burnt out on ministry that I said, we ended up becoming united as a couple. And at the time, we lived in Oklahoma, and I was like, when I'm done here, it's your turn, we'll do what's next. And that's how we ended up in Sun Valley. And so, sometimes you can run from God, but you cannot hide. And I'd already surrendered my life to something greater. The wonderful thing about that process was that I figured out how I could do my version of ministry without being full-time minister while I restored my soul. Now, let me tell you about the burnout process. It had everything to do with me and nothing to do with the people around me, because I didn't know how to do ministry in a balanced way. So I take full responsibility for having created burnout in my life, but it also created great opportunities for me to learn and to grow. So then, because my partner, John, who many of you have met, was so closed-minded, so limited in his thinking, that when we moved to Sun Valley, he expected me to make a living. I know. Pull my own weight. I was like, I thought I was going to be this trophy wife in Sun Valley. What is this? So I found myself wanting to make a living. There's a small denomination, small church, not enough to do that. So I went into property management and then evolved into real estate. I hit real estate. Real estate was hot, and I hit it just in time to go over the cliff. And found myself making no money, trying to figure out. So I said I was so successful in real estate, within just a couple of years, I was waiting tables at night, right? To make ends meet, because of that closed-minded John. Let's just blame him. But you see, the divine is always working for our highest good. The ego wants to control things. The ego wants to have it be this way. I look at that and go, had that trend continued with real estate, I might still be a real estate agent. But you see, I know that Spirit is calling me to my greater good. It is calling me to serve what is in my heart. And because I've made that primary surrender to the divine, I know my highest good is being revealed. So I think about, had my ego gotten its way, I would have lived in Vancouver and been the person that got fired a year later as the person that followed me was. Had the ego gotten its way, I'd be selling real estate, making a ton of money right now, instead of serving my heart's desire as your minister. Now, I'm open to you paying me a ton of money. I just want you to know. I'm good with it. It's not the money's not the issue, okay? But you see, life has a way of unfolding. But then I remember, so at some point in this waiting tables, I had this moment, clouds parted, and God speaks to me and says, Marty, what the heck are you doing? You know why you are here. I was like, okay. Time to be moving back into ministry. And so I began to look at, where do I serve? And so I looked at some options that were available. And one of the places was in Boise. They were looking for a new minister. Boise's not that far from Sun Valley. I thought, okay, this could work. And so I went down and I candidated, and they asked me a whole bunch of inappropriate questions, and it was lovely. And then things were evolving. Things were evolving at this point. And so one of the people said, I don't have a problem with being gay. I just don't like it being, flaunting it. And I said, okay, can we have that conversation? So if straight man comes and candidates for your church, and he makes reference to his wife and children, is he flaunting his heterosexuality? Right? But if I come and I speak of my beloved partner, see, this is, what are we thinking? But all of this is changing thanks to will and grace. Really, if you think about it. Any of these kids, this is why 67 or 80% of kids today see no issue where we see an issue. Some of us of a certain age see race much more than this younger generation that's coming up. We see differences more than this next millennium or group. And then finally, as it turned out, here we are. So I have an announcement. You remember when announcing you were gay was the big announcement? So old news. So I am in the process of becoming a Utah resident. John will continue to be in Sun Valley, so not that much changes except that I have a place here and I'm committed to being here, and this building thing has really caused me to rethink what's happening. So we still are in relationship and we'll continue to be so. But the thing you need to know about our marriage is that we both were ministers when we came into the relationship. So ministry, or we've always had to figure out how to make relationship work within ministry and not the opposite. So I just want to say that because the second question always is, what about John? It's like John's going to live there. We are, however, resizing our life and right-sizing it so that it's simpler. And so the horse is becoming a Utah with me. The dog will remain an Idahoan, as will John. So, and we still are good. It's a crazy thing. I know it's a crazy thing, but really isn't every relationship a crazy thing? We all have to figure out how to make it work. They're not all that different. So I share all of that with you because here's what I want us to take from this. I've watched as things have changed and evolved. I remember being a young person feeling so scared, so isolated, believing I was the only person different. Think about that. Today, if one of our kids comes out to us, we go, okay, cool. What do you think you'll wear to prom? You know, I mean, who are you going to invite? You know, I mean, it's just such a different reality, right? And now it's just what is with us. But what we'll see is this conversation will continue because in my case, John and I were married in Canada, in Vancouver. We got married the first time in Oregon when it was legal, and then 6 months later it was not legal, and so we were no longer married. Then when we were in Canada, we're like, we can do this. The most non-eventful thing I think we've ever done like you walk in, they give you a certificate, nice to meet you, have a great life. Ceremony was lovely. But so, are we married or are we not married? And that's the conversation that will continue. Does it count in Utah? Ultimately, there's the religious component of marriage, but really it becomes a legal issue. And so I just have to chuckle when I see well-meaning people stand up and say, this is not what God intended. Marriage is a sacred institution that has been this way for thousands and thousands of years. Watched one on TV say, you know, Solomon said. Now, just if you want, just for fun, look up Solomon and how many wives and how many concubines he had. I'm just thinking, not that big of a deal, right? It is not one thing, it is an evolving thing. What is happening in our world is people, this long arc of history will always bend towards justice. This ideal that we have set in our country is happening on a global planetary level, that all people are created equal. All people are children of the divine. This is only the latest chapter in an ongoing expression because, as Ernest Holmes said, spirit is always seeking its highest expression. It is always seeking freedom. Its very nature is to express more fully. And anytime we have injustice in the world, anytime where we have some who are treated as lesser than, that injustice must be brought to the light. So I know the world looks crazy. I know it looks like civil wars and all of this stuff. But what I also know is spirit and those who are spiritually minded are feeling that awakening. And as that happens, then until we reach a world that truly works for everyone, until we live in a world where everyone is honored and respected as a divine emanation of the one living spirit, we will have these conversations until we get it. So it is true. Oh my God, the world is changing. Yes. And so the question is, who will we be? Because I made that primary surrender, I knew some point, even through my resistance, that my life was going to be committed to being of service to God and my fellow man. And women, fellow humanity. That even though my ego likes to plan how that looks, there's a greater intelligence that is always at work, that is guiding my life. And when I'm willing to surrender to the greater intelligence, the good news, it's always bigger and better and more wonderful than anything I imagined. So I say to you, thank you for being a blessing in my life. Let us pray. Let us pray. And so as we take this moment to simply surrender to that divine intelligence, to that infinite wisdom, the one life always seeking its highest self-expression. I'm knowing here and now that this one life by its very nature is wholeness and harmony and love and beauty and joy. So we open ourselves in this moment to that. We allow this presence to reveal itself as health and well-being, as joy and harmony, as all good In truth, we are surrendering to our greater good right here and right now. I know that there is a divine intelligence at work, working through each one of us, bringing forth that which needs its expression as only we can uniquely provide. And so where I see the falling away, I know that there is also the coming together. I speak this word of truth for each of us gathered here, simply giving thanks for the many blessings in our lives. Wholeness and harmony, joy, love, and abundance. For I know it is all good. And as we extend blessings from this state of gratitude, we bless this community, knowing that it is divinely guided, divinely unfolding. We are blessed. We extend a blessing to our brothers and sisters around the planet. We're simply sensing and knowing a planet at peace. We're knowing a world that works for everyone, where equality and justice is the order of the day. And as always, we bless all priests, rabbis, ministers, teachers of every faith. For we know there are many pathways to the divine. And wherever spiritual enlightenment is taking place, we name it good. So for all of these blessings and so many more, I'm simply giving thanks, allowing it to be so, as together we say, and so it is.